We expelled Iran and Hezbollah. In a stunning claim, Syria's President Ahmed al-Sharra says his forces drove out Tehran's proxies and are negotiating peace with Israel. The revelation marks a major shift as Damascus balances thawing ties with Washington and uneasy talks with Moscow after years of war. Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa said his government drove Iranian and Hezbollah forces out of Syria while answering a question on Syrian forces' dodgy relationship with the Israelis. In an interview published by the Washington Post, al-Sharaa said,
"Israel has always said it has concerns about Syria because it is afraid of the threats that the Iranian militias and Hezbollah represent. We are the ones who expelled those forces out of Syria."
Iran had expanded its military presence in Syria during the civil war, deploying military advisors and coordinating Hezbollah operations across the country. Israeli forces conducted hundreds of airstrikes against Iranian positions during that period, targeting weapons convoys, military installations, and personnel. Tehran had used Syria as a transit route for supplying Hezbollah in Lebanon and maintained several military bases across Syrian territory. He also said Syria's negotiations with Israel have made progress.
"We are engaged in direct negotiations with Israel, and we have gone a good distance on the way to reach an agreement. But to reach a final agreement, Israel should withdraw to their pre-December 8th borders."
On the idea of creating a demilitarized zone south of Damascus, al-Sharaa said,
"To talk about an entire region demilitarized, it will be difficult, because if there is any kind of chaos, who will protect it? And at the end of the day, this is Syrian territory, and Syria should have the freedom of dealing with their own territory."
Al-Sharaa then discussed Syria's relationship with Russia, acknowledging years of armed conflict between his forces and Moscow.
"We were at war against Russia for 10 years, and it was a hard, difficult war. They announced that they killed me several times."
The Syrian president said his government needs Moscow because of its permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. He said Syria requires Russian support on certain international matters and does not want to push the Kremlin toward alternative arrangements in dealing with Damascus. Russia previously maintained a naval facility at Tartus and an airbase at Hmeimim in Syria, though the status of these installations remains under negotiation after Syria terminated military agreements earlier this year. Al-Sharaa addressed the issue of former President Bashar al-Assad, saying it remains a complicating factor in relations with Russia. He indicated Syria would maintain its right to seek accountability regarding Assad, though he noted the relationship with Moscow is still in early stages. Russia provided crucial military support to Assad throughout the civil war. The interview follows recent American policy changes toward Syria. The Treasury Department announced Monday it would suspend most sanctions on Syria for 180 days under the Caesar Act. However, Washington maintained restrictions on business dealings connected to Iran and Russia, including transactions involving their governments, goods, technology, or financing. The sanctions relief came after al-Sharaa visited Washington in what marked the first trip by a Syrian head of state to the American capital. Al-Sharaa held talks with President Trump on bilateral relations. US officials removed al-Sharaa from the specially designated global terrorists list before the visit, clearing the way for direct diplomatic engagement. The partial sanctions suspension offers economic relief while keeping restrictions on dealings tied to Tehran and Moscow. The 180-day period allows both governments to evaluate the diplomatic relationship and assess possibilities for further cooperation.